The following video tutorial is used for understanding and using point of view in analyzing a document, and understanding and using historical context in analyzing a document. The documents that you will look at today will come from the lesser heard portions of American society, and the document's origins will come from the decades of the 1780s all the way through the first part of the 19th century. We will use the documents not only to understand and be able to perform some higher level document analysis skills, but with a focus on the evolution of the phrase "we the people" and how different members of American society understood and implemented the phrase "we the people" to their perceptions of the role of government, the institution of slavery, diplomacy, and a host of other topics. This document analysis tutorial will count for 15 points towards the student's Unit 3 test grade. The student should make sure that they listen to the directions carefully and record any quotes, notes on their discussion, or actual document analysis on a sheet of notebook paper to turn in. Students will be assessed on proficiency and completion of the tutorial. Students will be allowed to work solo, with a partner, or in groups up to 4 people. Let's begin. The first part of the tutorial will focus on using point of view in analyzing a document. The purpose of this portion of the tutorial is to build a student's understanding of how the author's point of view influences the content of a primary source, and how this information can be used in analyzing a document. The essential question of this portion of the tutorial is, how can the author's point of view affect how a primary source is used as evidence in answering a historical question? After completing this portion of the tutorial, students will be able to identify the point of view in a primary source document, rank the reliability of primary sources based on point of view, and compare various primary source documents to determine how point of view alters the validity of the documents. This first slide will be the beginnings of your notes to turn in. You should write down the title of the slide using point of view in analyzing a document. You should record the quote, "Alan Frederick is the best high school basketball player to appear on the scene in the last 10 years. While you do not have to write down the list of possible authors, you will have to write down your final conclusions for the task below. Some of the possible authors to this quote are Alan's girlfriend in her diary, his dad on Twitter, his coach in a letter of recommendation, his history teacher in the stands at a basketball game, the school newspaper in an article about his high school career, or last, the head coach of the Duke basketball program to a reporter at ESPN. Working in small groups or with a partner, you should rank the reliability of the source based on each point of view, 1 being the most reliable to 5 being the least reliable. After ranking the authors, students should discuss and record why some sources are more reliable than others. When doing this, you want to be able to point out how point of view is closely dependent on the author's background and how that might influence the author's tone and perspective. Next, we will look at historic point of view. Below is a quote that could be attributed to one of 4 people. The quote is, "Our country is too large to have all its affairs directed by a single government." The list of possible authors are George Washington as president, Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of the Treasury under Washington, Thomas Jefferson, politician. This would be Thomas Jefferson anywhere from the time that he wrote the Declaration of Independence all the way through the year 1800. And the last possible author would be Thomas Jefferson, the president, after he wins the election of 1800, and before he leaves office in 1809. Your task. First, you should write down the title of the slide and the quote. Next, you should work independently, and you should rank the reliability of the source based on each point of view using the same rankings, 1 being the most reliable, 4 being the least reliable, and writing your justifications for each ranking. After you're done with that, you should turn to a partner and compare your rankings and come up with a final list. Make sure you have the final list recorded in your notes. After recording the final list, you should discuss and record your conversation by through answering the following questions. Which source was most reliable to you and your group? Who do you feel made this claim? What do we know about the roles of each of these people living in the 18th century? How might these roles affect their point of view? How might it influence their tone or their perspective? How might the entire meaning of the quote change based on your understanding of point of view? The author of the quote was actually Thomas Jefferson as politician. Next, we will engage in an activity in groups of 4 entitled Who Said It? First, this activity is built around sources from different areas of American society. The goal here is to help students understand why is it important to consider point of view when reading primary sources. First, you should compare different demographics of American society. These would be women, free blacks, white males, slaves, Native Americans, etc. of the 18th century, and discuss and write down what we know about these demographics at the time. You should also discuss what types of sources would be the most reliable to further our understanding of the lives they led and their perceptions of the phrase, "we the people." After doing the first part of this Who Said It activity, you should then look in your folders and pass out the 4 short excerpts from various sources. 1 will be from a former slave, 1 from a free black, 1 from a woman, and the last from a Native American. Students should read each excerpt, keeping in mind the author's point of view. Then, students should predict who wrote each source. Students should claim or should give specific examples from the text that indicate point of view that support your claims about the author and the reliability. After correctly matching the sources to each author, students should then discuss each author's point of view and answer the questions at the bottom of the handout. Students should also, when matching the sources to each author and providing evidence from the text, they should copy the chart from the handout onto their paper. The next portion of the video tutorial will focus on understanding and using historical context in analyzing a document. Make sure that you remember that the same rules that apply to using point of view apply to the historical context portion of the tutorial. Students should record the title of any PowerPoint slide that they have been asked to record or jot down information for. The purpose of this activity is to build students' understanding of how to determine the historical context of a document and how to use this information to analyze its significance to a historical question. The essential question that you should be able to answer after viewing this portion of the tutorial is, How does the historical context of a primary source document affect its use as evidence in answering a historical question? After completing this tutorial, you should be able to predict how historical context can alter the meaning of primary source documents, as well as analyze a primary source document using your knowledge of its historical context. To introduce historical context, let's use the same example from the previous lesson. Make sure that you have written down the title of the slide as well as the quote. The quote goes as follows. Alan Frederick is the best high school basketball player to appear on the scene in the last 10 years. We have the same list of possible authors. However, here's some new context for the quote. Alan Frederick's father was a highly successful college basketball player at Duke University under the same coach. He now owns a local business that is a major employer in the town. Your task is to work with a partner to discuss how this new context changes the rankings you gave your sources. Justify why you changed your rankings based on this new information. Make sure that you use the term context as you justify your changes in ranking in order to reinforce the idea of the importance of historical context and document analysis. Next, here are some key questions you should ask when considering context. Where and when was this document produced? What was happening at the time the document was produced? What events were happening in the world at the same time? How might this affect the author's audience, purpose, or point of view? Would the meaning of the document change if we place it in a different historical context? Those are just some of a few of these underlying questions you should ask yourself and consider when you're looking at using historical context in analyzing a document. Your task is to read the excerpt from Benjamin Banneker's letter to Thomas Jefferson, written in 1791. We'll use this document to explore the following question. How did the phrase, "we the people," evolve to mean different things to different people? Before you read, discuss what you already know of Benjamin Banneker. Answer the following questions in your notes. What do we already know about the effect of slavery on politics during this period? Where and when was this letter produced? What was happening in the country that may affect the author's point of view? What events were happening in the world at the time that may affect the author's point of view? How might this context affect the reliability of Banneker's letter? Next, you should read the letter from Banneker to Jefferson. Note the text of the letter that is tied to any of the information obtained from the questions above. How would the meaning of the letter change if we place it in a different historical context? Another question to consider, using the different historical context, would the meaning change if it was written to the delegates of the Constitutional Convention in 1787? Finally, you want to use the document to answer the question based on the historical context of the document. Remember the question that we are supposed to be trying to answer. How did the phrase, "we the people," evolve to mean different things to different people? You want to use the document to answer the question based on the historical context of the document. So once again, you want to use the answers to the questions above. You want to use any text from the letter that is tied to the information above to come up with a response to the question, how did the phrase, "we the people," evolve to mean different things to different people? Make sure that at the end of this tutorial, you have your name on your sheet of paper, you have the title of the slides that you took notes on, and you have completed all the assigned tasks and discussion points of this tutorial. Thank you so much for your attention. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.